Is medically transitioning children child abuse? Stating the opinion that it is while serving as a Chilliwack school trustee is a primary reason why Barry Neufeld is currently fighting a human rights complaint filed against him by the British Columbia Teachers Federation 7 years ago. The online hate speech allegations and the quasi judicial human rights tribunal that is hearing the case against Neufeld is all happening under the province's anti free speech provision found in Section 7 of BC's Human Rights Code. You may know that provision because it's the same provision we've been asking for your help to have repealed and to help cover our legal expenses to fight it through our special website called repealsection7.com. That's because Rebel News is also being sued because of it. In our case, by a violent, actually racist, predatory trans activist born as Jonathan Yaniv, but who now goes as Jessica Serenity Simpson, and who is disgruntled by our reports that have exposed Simpson's numerous depraved acts, which Simpson excuses away in court by claiming to be a victim of transphobia. Today's interview, letting Barry tell his story, is just another reason why we are asking you to go to repealsection7.com because it's got to go. Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and many of you recognize Barry Neufeld as the now former school trustee of nearly 30 years who has been bravely sounding the alarm on BC's controversial sexual orientation gender identity program SOGI 123 and gender ideology-themed learning resources that are being normalized in schools. You can catch up on his past plights at our website called stopclassroomgrooming.com. But for now, I bring you a sit-down interview with Neufeld after he had just testified in a recently held National Citizens Inquiry hearing last week, which heard many testimonies regarding safety concerns for children in Canada, including the harms of gender ideology behind school doors. I also speak with Neufeld's lawyer, James Kitchen, who has taken on the big task of representing Neufeld for his upcoming hearing, which begins next month.
Well, as a very experienced school trustee, it says in the School Act that trustees have a responsibility to approve learning resources. And when I learned what was being included in the SOGI 123 learning resources, I thought, I can't be a part of a school system that pushes this ideology, and I spoke out against it. I said that it wasn't enough consultation on it, parents weren't involved, physicians weren't involved, psychiatrists weren't involved. It was totally designed by some activists. But immediately they pushed back at me and said that I was a hateful bigot. And the school teachers in Chilliwack accused me of creating a dangerous work environment for them. And they have been gathering evidence for the past almost 8 years. They have amassed over 600 files and probably another 400 emails. So it's a massive file. And I started looking for a lawyer back in March because my government paid lawyers refused to represent me anymore when I refused to settle out of court. And the law firms that I approached, each of them took about 2 weeks looking over the evidence against me, and they chickened out. They said, no, this is too big for us. But in the middle of September, James Kitchen stepped forward and he said, you're the kind of client that I like. He said, you wouldn't back down. You wouldn't make a settlement out of court. He's defended a lot of pastors, and most of them caved in and made settlements out of court, apologizing for breaking COVID rules and so forth. So anyways, we're headed into a 2-week trial. The Human Rights Tribunal is not a real court. It's there's not a judge that sits on the bench. It's a panel of 3 people. They're somewhat trained in law, but they're mostly just bleeding heart social justice warriors and snowflakes. And we're praying for a good result.
Now, you're at the NCI and you got to sit up there. What does it mean to you to be able to sit in front of a room of people, a live stream that is international, and tell your story like that?
You know, the mainstream media in Canada has never given me that opportunity. I've had several interviews by faith based podcasters. I had an interesting interview with Megan Murphy a couple of weeks ago. She's a noted feminist, and she was speaking out against this forced pronoun, and men and women's spaces in 2016 before I was even aware that it was an issue. But we hit it off pretty good. And she said that there's nothing I have said that she can't disagree with. But today was especially rewarding because I knew the audience agreed with me and they sympathized with me, and they were so complimentary afterwards for my stand. And it kind of made it feel like it's been worth this last 7 years of getting beat over the head by the left wing media, because finally some people can understand my concern, that my only concern is for the safety of children. It's not about my rights to free speech, because free speech is extremely stifled in Canada. It's not about my charter rights of freedoms in Canada, because both my lawyers have said the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms in Canada is not worth the paper that it's written on. But it's all about protecting children. And you know, not just protecting children that may be considering transitioning. Even ordinary kids learn this stuff at school, and they are taught that this is the new science. They go home and tell their parents about it, and if their parents say, "Oh, that's crazy, you know, ridiculous, we don't believe that," it turns the kids against their parents. They start calling their parents names. And it's just driving a wedge between so many people. In four of the cases that I know of where a child has wanted to transition, the family has ended up in a very, very bitter divorce. One parent supporting the transition, the other one opposing it. And along with the trauma of taking puberty blockers and hormones and all the rest of that, the child also has to deal with the trauma of their parents breaking up over the issue.
Now, at the time of conducting this interview with Barry, we are still waiting the final outcome of British Columbia's general election. And the BC Conservatives, who are neck and neck with BC NDP and have a possibility of winning the majority, have pledged to remove SOGI from schools and replace it with a zero tolerance anti bullying program if they form government. You may already know that answer while you're watching this. So I wanted to pause here to invite Neufeld's lawyer, James Kitchen, to weigh in on if SOGI were to be removed before Barry's hearing, or even removed years later before someone else accused of a similar hate thought crimes case. Would that have any impact on their odds of winning?
It wouldn't, because, well, ultimately, Barry was criticizing SOGI 123. The complainants are alleging transgender discrimination because they're saying, look, anytime you criticize our ideas, our belief system, this idea that you can switch your genders, that gender affirming healthcare is sort of a right for kids, i.e., with basically body mutilation surgery. That's really what it comes down to. And the puberty blockers, chemical castration, as it's sometimes called, all those things, right? The teaching of that belief system and how to act on that belief system by doing things to your body. Whether SOGI's 123 are there or not, that's going to probably unfortunately continue to be taught in the public school system, right? That's what a lot of teachers believe. It's what the unions really advocate for. It's happening in Saskatchewan. It's happening all over the place, right? So if Barry was to criticize that in place of SOGI 123, you'd still have this issue where they would say, well, it's discrimination because you're criticizing our ideas and our belief systems, and we perceive that as the same as criticizing us and who we are and our identity in a way that you're not allowed to, because, you know, in BC, publication, i.e. things that you say or write on the internet or out in the world, isn't as a protected area, right? So if you say something criticizing transgender people, right, that is theoretically discrimination under the code in BC. And so Barry's not criticizing transgender people. He's actually criticizing their ideas and the teaching of their ideas to little kids in school. Okay, that's what he's criticizing. Which
Yes.
free speech protects, which isn't actually discrimination, but the complainants are saying that is. So, I mean, SOGI is sort of the source of that, but remove SOGI and you'd still have that going on to some degree, hopefully a lot less, and you still have the potential for these types of complaints from these teachers and these teachers unions.
Well, and that's right. During his testimony at the NCI, he said in numerous instances that he is not looking at a group of people. And he said he has a lot of compassion actually for people, children in particular, who do identify as something else. So it's just so you would think a school trustee of all people would be able to not be accused of discrimination when they go after SOGI 123. Now, last time I had talked to Mr. Neufeld before catching up with him at the NCI, he was explaining how he didn't have a lawyer and how it was going to be quite difficult. And then you came along. Why don't you just quickly let us know how that happened and if anybody's interested, how they can help out?
Well, Barry tried to connect with me a long time ago, but the number he had for me was an old number, and then he just sort of gave up. But then people who know me and know him got us connected again. He got connected with me properly, and I said, "Oh, geez, you don't have a lawyer. Like, let me see if I can try to figure this out and clear my schedule and sort this out." And he said, "Yeah, I mean, I want you. I need you. I don't have anybody else." So we did. We got involved. Or I got involved and I sought an adjournment. That wasn't near enough time. It's a massive case. So I asked for an adjournment only for 6 weeks, just to give me the time to prepare, because it's an enormous case, the amount of material. And the other side fought that very, very hard. And it was this huge fight over this 6-week adjournment, which is a little bit ridiculous. Ultimately, the tribunal did the right thing and sided with me, and I'm glad to see that they did. So now we're going to a hearing on November 25th. It's virtual. People can attend. They just got to go on the Human Rights Tribunal website of BC, and they can register to attend, and they can come in and they can listen to it. And it's going to last for 2 weeks. And I've said, for all my time involved, it'll probably cost at least $60,000, because it'll probably take me at least 200 or 300 hours of lawyer's work. It's just the amount of material to go through and to run a 2-week hearing. That's just the amount of time it takes. So if people want to support Barry and enable me to do the best job I can by actually getting paid to do this, they can go to the Rights and Freedoms Fundraising Society website. This is a third-party organization that was specifically created just a few weeks ago to raise money for Barry Neufeld and Dr. Hoff, which is another case I may be involved in next year. And so they can go on there, they can pay by credit card, and they can pay by e-transfer. And they'll be able to see the stuff that I'm doing in this file. It's being posted online on Barry's website and on that website. This is a really particularly important case. Barry's a particularly wonderful guy to support. He's really actually measured and moderate and reasonable and respectable when he speaks about this stuff. And it's a really important case for free speech. If school board trustees can't speak out to protect kids, we're in real trouble. It's not like it's some angry parent, which should have the right anyways. But I mean, it's this, it's a school board trustee who's literally elected to do this. So it's pretty important, and I encourage people to support it.
Now, although Kitchen says removing SOGI wouldn't help Barry's case, I still wanted to know how Barry feels that BC now has a political party set to form government or official opposition that believes SOGI should be removed from schools.
It actually makes me feel very hopeful that perhaps some of this insanity is going to go away, because the ideology behind gender theory is so bizarre, so unscientific. It would be such a relief to see that could be put in the past and could be put to bed. It's been done in Alberta, it's been done in England, it's been done in Sweden, Finland, and several American states. It could happen in British Columbia as well.
Section 7 could start to stifle the voices of many school trustees who want to represent parents' concerns about gender ideology in schools, but don't want to end up like Barry. And what do you think it's doing to journalists? Ones like me, the very few, who are willing to tell you the other side of the story to affirm all things transgender or else. Please help us repeal this Section 7 provision by going to repealsection7.com, and please donate what you can to help us cover the costly expense to defend ourselves against it.